Hello, and welcome to my presentation about administering and analyzing nursing exams. My name is Laura Curtis. This presentation is about how to administer nursing exams with integrity and analyze exams so that we can support reliability and validity, measure academic achievement, and assign grades to nursing students. In this presentation, I have already done a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to be describing disclosures and the learning outcomes. I'm going to go over strategies to support testing integrity, how to be aware of and adhere to accommodation needs, supporting reliability and validity of each question in the overall exam. I'm going to talk about statistical item analysis as well as the exam analysis, including the KR20. We're going to talk about the student test review approaches with advantages and disadvantages of each strategy, and then I'll do a conclusion with how to reach me for feedback and a list of references. So for disclosures, I have no disclosures financially. However, this presentation contains discussion of accommodations and accessibility for awareness only. Please consult your accommodations and accessibility assets at your educational organization for legal policies and procedures that affect you. So our learning outcomes, at the conclusion of this presentation, you'll be able to describe how to support testing integrity, describe how to administer nursing exams, apply strategies to analyze nursing exam results, and state the advantages and disadvantages of different student test review approaches. To begin with, in administering the exams, we want to assure test integrity to the best of our ability. So what we can do is make sure that all of our syllabi reflect the academic integrity policies for the educational institution and for our schools or departments of nursing. And we need to discuss them with the students at the beginning of each course and before each exam. All of our testing is on the online platform, and that allows for both the analysis and it helps to mirror what the students need to be exposed to in order to support their success on the licensure exams. And this also helps with test integrity because it's giving the same test to the same student at the same time. How should they be seated? Students need to be seated in a way that it's spaced so that the students can't easily see each other's screens or be in the line of their sight. If the classroom is too crowded, faculty need to secure different rooms for when they have to administer the exams. Let's talk about personal belongings. Where can we allow them? Should we allow them? Yes, you can allow personal belongings, especially for the student's security. They can be in the room as long as they're in the place where the students cannot access them, like the front of the classroom. And so what students can have with them at the desk? Well, they can have their laptop, but they're not supposed to have scrap paper or fluids to drink, and they shouldn't be writing anything down. So the online exam platform has a calculator for simple calculations that might come up during the exam, but otherwise the student should not be writing anything down. Now let's talk about where the faculty should be during the exam. The faculty should be circulating around the room. So this helps the students to not engage in attempts to communicate with each other, and it also allows the faculty to check on the screens, and that helps to assure that the student and not a program or a remote test taker are actually taking the exam. Finally, in assuring accessibility and accommodations, one of the things we can do, according to Gedzik, Nyman, and DeRoyne, is engage in universal design to provide a general accessibility to all of our students. However, some students may still need specialized accommodations. In that case, the faculty needs to write into the syllabus and announce in class that students needing accommodations must go through the Accommodations and Accessibility Office to be evaluated and assigned accommodations. And once that's done, the accommodations need to be in place and the student needs to request the use appropriately. So that way we as faculty can remain neutral and we can make sure that accommodations are fairly given. So we've talked about how we can ensure test integrity to the best of our ability by making sure that the way that the students sit, the things that they're having access to during their tests, and then how accommodations are fairly given. Even so, we may have some problems with test integrity, but it's our best approaches. Okay, we've administered the nursing exam with integrity, and then the next step is interpreting the results. There might be some flawed items, meaning items that weren't structured well, or despite our best efforts, they're biased, or there's more than one correct answer, or we have distractors that lead unintentionally to the correct answer, etc. So we need to analyze our exams before we finalize those grades. When we created the exam, we had our colleagues give us a read through to check for obvious issues, and that can help support reliability and validity. And after that, we administered the exam. Now we need to look at statistical analysis and test performance, and then after that, we're going to make sure that we've involved the students in the process for a final analysis before giving grades. But for now, let's focus on statistical analysis. We can support reliability and validity using analysis. So the definition of reliability is when we're using a measure like an exam, and it measures the same values consistently over time. One of the values that we can use for our analysis that kind of shows us reliability is KR20. When we're discussing validity, that means that our exam is actually accurately measuring, not just consistently measuring, but also accurately measuring. So in order to support validity, we need to review our test content, responses, the structure of the exam, and the statistical variables. And we also need to remember that an exam can be reliable but not valid. However, if it is valid, it's also reliable. So when we're looking at the whole exam, we're going to be looking at the KR20, which is in the next slide, and we're also going to be looking at measures of central tendency. By that, I mean the mean, the median, the mode, the range of the distance between the highest score and the lowest score, the standard deviation, the reliable coefficient or the alpha, and we want that to be 0.5 to 0.85 if we're self-rating our exams, the standard error of measurement or SEM, the frequency distribution of scores, the mean item difficulty, and the mean point by serial index, which is also called the mean PBI. If there is, so these values actually interact with each other. So if we have a mean that's higher than the median, then that means that our scores are positively skewed. If the mean is lower than the median, then that means our scores are negatively skewed. So there's a relationship between these values. One thing to remember about measures of central tendency is that if nursing students need to reach a threshold score to pass and continue with the nursing program, and that's higher than a general average, which is around 70, then they have pressure on them to perform higher, and then we may not get the normal bell curve. So if nursing students are dismissed from the program and they only continue with higher performance, exam scores may be skewed even higher by the time the students are at the level where they're just about to graduate. So in this way, exams might be excellent measures even if students are consistently scoring high grades. Also, difficulty levels are relative, maybe more discernible in the lower levels than they are in the higher levels. This is just something to think about in general observation. I couldn't find any literature to support this. However, I did find Ireland et al. Stated they could find no published studies that even established the need for minimum grades in the nursing programs, but they did engage in a quality improvement project that resulted in higher first-time pass rates when they adopted minimum grades to become mandatory. So when we're looking at each item for the item analysis, we look at the difficulty level, we look at the discrimination, and we also look at the distractor frequencies. Herring and Dyer in 2026 reviewed literature indicating that academic nurse educators use the KR20 and measures of central tendency to look at the entire exam, and they analyze items in their exam using the difficulty level, the discrimination index, and the distractor frequencies. Professional development and years of experience in nursing education most predicted the use of these evidence-based strategies. As promised, here's the slide on KR20. So if we would have the ability to make an average of all the split halves that could possibly exist in any given test or exam, that would be what the KR20 kind of represents. And that is, if you could take a test and you could split it in half so that the same content is on each half, and then you gave those two split halves to the same student and they got the same grade, that would be a very reliable test. You could divide that same score by the same score, you would get the number of 1. So using the KR20 formula, you're actually looking at the variability of the scores across the mean. So the higher the variability of the scores across the mean, the higher the reliability of the results. If there's no variability, then we get 0, and the results are not reliable. Therefore, we want the KR20 to be as high as possible. We want it to be as close to 1 as possible. In conclusion, all of these analytics that I've gone over are included in the exam platform software we're using for our nursing education program, and we also have this information attached to our benchmarking exams. Now that we've talked about test integrity and we've talked about test analysis, let's talk about finishing up that analysis so that we can assign a grade to the students. And the way we do that is we engage in a student test or exam review. If you're going to be using the access to the exam, you need to make sure that you have these reviews in a secure setting so that you can control to the best of your ability how much the questions, stems, and the answers leave the classroom. Students need to feel comfortable to both voice what they think about items and why they gave the answers as they did. So now I'm going to review 3 approaches with the advantages and disadvantages of doing the student review. In their first example, it's a group review after all of the students have taken the test with the exam and the answers. The advantage to this is that the students see the original exam and the answers, but a disadvantage could be that the students may see the review as an opportunity to openly challenge the questions and the grades instead of using it as an opportunity for learning and to give faculty feedback. Another approach is to informally ask the students right after the exam how they felt it went and what questions they remembered were challenging or easy. The advantages of this are that the exam is fresh in their minds and they do not have access to the original questions and answers, leading to more item security and the opportunity for you to add these items to a test bank. The disadvantage is that they don't have the original exam and the answers in front of them, and they may not remember all of their feedback to give. This is the third approach that I'm going to be reviewing. It's the one-on-one with the student. The advantage of this is that the student will know exactly what went well or what they were challenged by, and they may be less embarrassed to say things that could lead to better learning. This is a great option to use when somebody hasn't done well on a test. The disadvantage, though, is that it's time-consuming. Not all students will need this level of support, so it's one of those things that you can be judicious about using, and I would recommend using it only for students when you need to help them to improve. At least one approach should be used. It doesn't have to be one of my 3. We can figure out some more. This is part of supporting the reliability and validity, as well as helping the faculty to make decisions about the exam and item analysis, and whether to edit the exam or use the items to add to the faculty item test bank. Okay, so let's go over our learning outcomes because this concludes the presentation. So at the conclusion of this presentation, we were supposed to be able to describe how to support test and integrity, describe how to administer nursing exams, apply strategies to analyze nursing exam results, state the advantages and disadvantages of different student test review approaches. Okay, so and here's the slide that we talk about what was presented here, including the introduction, disclosures, learning outcomes, talking about the different strategies we talked about, and talking about student test review approaches. So this concludes our presentation. I'm going to be giving you contact information and references. So if you would like to reach me to send feedback, you can email me, Laura Curtis, at lcurtis27@liberty.edu. Here are my references. You can pause to read them if you need to. And thank you so much for your time.